You're looking at a bunch of different specs when it comes to picking out your photography equipment. And if money is no issue, get the best that money can buy. If money is an issue, if you're on a budget or you don't have a lot to spend on your equipment, you need to be a lot more careful in your purchasing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the megapixel. That's one of the things you're going to see when you're looking at the equipment is how many millions of points there are on that sensor. A 1 megapixel will be 1 million points. A 50 megapixel will be 50 million points on that sensor. So, of course, the higher megapixels, the higher quality that imagery is going to be. Now, are you going to notice that difference? Well, we're going to give an example. We're going to show a picture from this Canon XT camera. This is an older model camera, and it's an 8 megapixel camera, 8 million points. And then we're going to take the same picture using a newer model of this Rebel series. It's a T8i, and it's a 24 megapixel camera. We're going to use the same lens. We're going to use the same f-stops. We're going to do everything, and just you're going to take a look at the imagery and see if you can really see a difference in the 8 megapixels to 24, because that may affect what kind of purchases you may get started on your photography career. So let's get to it. Let's start out by saying that, of course, the higher number of megapixels, the higher quality the image is going to be. But how high of a quality of an image do you need? Most people looking at the photograph from the 8 megapixel camera versus the 24 megapixel camera are not going to see a difference. They're not going to see a difference in the imagery. And there is a considerable cost difference between these two cameras. Something that affects the imagery probably more than the megapixels is the processor itself and how it processes the imagery. The lens is going to be very important. So don't get super tied up in, I have to have this amount of megapixels. It all depends on what you're going to be shooting and what your intent is for your photographs. If you are going to be shooting wildlife photography and you're going to be rattling off a bunch of shots and bursts, and you're going to have to zoom in to catch that, yes, you're going to want a higher megapixel. But if you're just doing street photography and you're just doing things that interest you at the time and you're posing, you don't necessarily have to have the high-end megapixel. You can take a professional with a low-end camera like this and take wonderful photographs. And then you can take an amateur photographer with high-end equipment and take terrible photographs. So it's about the photographer, and it's about the eye that you have looking through the equipment. The equipment will come along. Once you've decided what direction you're going in, you may decide that megapixels are important to you. But you also may decide that the quality of the lens is more important than the megapixels or the processor. There's so many other things that may affect your imagery more than just the megapixels. So don't worry about just the megapixels. We're going to give a couple examples. Here's some examples of the 8 versus the 24 megapixel, and you can see that there may or may not be difference. Once again, keep in consideration, I use the same lens, I use the same f-stop. The only difference is that the processors are different, and they're going to process this JPEG image differently. I didn't shoot in RAW because the older model camera won't shoot in that format. So both of these are JPEG, but the newer model is going to process the picture a little bit better. Now we're going to zoom in to the end of one of the little fronds, so the end of one of the little plants, so maybe you can see a difference there. And once again, we've zoomed way in between an 8 megapixel and a 24 megapixel. Okay, are you going to do this? Are you going to zoom that far into an image? I don't think so, because at that point, both of them don't look good. So when you're looking for your equipment, don't worry too much about the megapixel. If down the road you decide that you're going into a specific form of photography or imagery or videography and you need the higher count, that's fine. And you know, if you're going to be shooting YouTube videos and things like this, you don't want huge file sizes. You want to have a small, workable, decent file size as you can. So once again, don't worry too much about the megapixels, especially if you're just getting started. Work on your skills, and I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, hit the subscribe button. And once again, I really do hope you have a great day.